Almost exactly 1 year ago, ChatGPT debuted and catapulted AI into the minds and the imaginations of the general public. But generative AI has been in the works for decades, and its ramifications we can only begin to consider and to anticipate. And that goes for the economy, for society, for government and diplomacy, and for privacy and security. So first, we're going to start local and focus here on Japan. And we are honored to have these two government officials with us to discuss today. So Yamano-san and Suga-san, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And Suga-san, we'll start with you. You're a director in the Digital Economy Division. Mm-hmm. What do you see as some of the biggest areas of opportunity for AI in Japan? And how do you think it will transform not only the Japanese economy, but society at large?
The fact that the Japanese people are very excited with this new technology called the generative AI, and they are trying multiple ways to master how they are going to use the technology and live with those technologies, is the strength. That's what I think. And the government, Japanese government, is trying to create a solid foundation for the people to let them keep using that technology, the top technology that, at the cheapest cost. And in order to do that, we're trying to create the non-competitive area and ask the companies to collaborate. Then that includes the rule about how we are going to govern AI.
And Yamano-san, on the other side, what do you see as some of the main concerns around AI in the public? And do you think that those concerns are warranted, or are there bigger risks we're not yet seeing?
Yeah, thank you. I would like to answer your question, Dean-san, but my English is not good, little poor.
So, no problem.
Yeah, please listen to me through the internet. So I speak in Japanese. After from now.
No problem.
Well, first of all, for the entire Japanese society, in May this year, we had the so-called AI strategy conference in which 7 concerns had been identified. And so, in other words, we had identified 7 risks. And the top risk that was listed up was the leakage of private information. And with disinformation, there would be confusion in the society. And by using generative AI, cybersecurity would be vulnerable to the cyber attack. And I'd like to come back to the point later on, but Japan took the leadership to establish the Hiroshima AI process. And last Friday, we had the ministerial meeting. And in this process, the OECD member nations had responded to a questionnaire survey. What would be the possible risks for the OECD countries and what would be the possible opportunities? And the response of the questionnaire survey had listed up the social instability as a result of disinformation and also the fear of cyber attack. And the most serious concern was disinformation would be in the net space or the net environment without people realizing, which would lead to the instability of the society. But it's not that people should regulate that, but the complexity of generative AI and hallucination may be possible. And depending on how you use the generative AI, there would be misinformation or incorrect answers. So that means that digital literacy would have to be improved, and that may be the most needed measures to implement.
It's too long.
Thank you for that. No, I just wanted to make sure I got all of your comments. I feel like there's a tension between some of what both of you have just said. So on one hand, there's this huge amount of enthusiasm and interest on the part of the public, but that almost makes them more susceptible to the types of risks that you're talking about. So are there ways that the government is already thinking about educating the people, creating some guardrails around it? What are, for either one of you, I guess, what are some of the ways that you think we can manage that tension?
まさにこれから日本語で失礼します。
So allow me to speak in Japanese now. As Mr. Yamano mentioned,
新しい技術でも必ず
new technologies always transform the society. So there's always risks that accompany this innovation and the new technology. So inclusive of the risk, we should recognize the innovation. So on the back of the people using this totally new technology, there are people who really has to underpin these new technologies. Now, when printing technology or search technology came to the fore, some said that humans will become stupid using these technologies. So the intelligent people, or the people who thought was most intelligent in the society, said that these technologies would make humans stupid. But we have managed to really master the technology and fully leverage the technology. So we should, first of all, recognize the harm and the risk that involves in the technology, to be very objective and calm to analyze the risk. And that should be the approach to a totally new technology. And I think in Japan, even among the people in general, such discussion can take place. It's quite possible. Together with MIC, this new generative AI, how that can be used and what should be the risks to be recognized is incorporated in the guideline that would be distributed to the private corporations in Japan. Of course, each ministry had considered the need to formulate a guideline incorporating the risks that they thought were critical. But with the emergence of the generative AI, everybody would have to really implement symbiosis with the new technology. So we decided that all the agencies should get together at an early point in time to fully integrate the guidelines and come up with a very comprehensive guideline. That may have been very exceptional from the perspective of the private corporations, but we listened to the views of the experts and we incorporated what used to be in these different guidelines of the agencies and ministries, and we tried to gather wisdom of all the governmental agencies to come up with a totally comprehensive guideline. So really hope that the people in Japan would comply with that guideline. And what really becomes a problem is if those people do not comply, then maybe the honest and fair people would really be affected and would be harmed. And so we believe that the government has to be fully accountable in this initiative.
Thank you so much, Yamano-san. Anything to add from your side?
Yeah. 菅さんの言う通りでして、ここまで
Well, I totally agree with Ms. Suga.
一緒になってコラボレーション
MIC and MITI working together is very rare. And we have never worked so close to come up with this guideline. And that is a reflection of how important we think this matter is. So together with MITI, we are formulating this guideline. And what is also important is that technology matters should be addressed by technology. So if there is a rising concern of generative AI, we would have to identify the set of new technologies that would allow us to resolve these issues generated by generative AI with the private and public partnership.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So you had mentioned the Hiroshima AI process, so I'd like to turn to that now. And Suga-san, question first for you and then for Yamano-san. So Japan has taken a leadership role with the Hiroshima AI process, as we heard before. What do you think is particularly unique or particularly promising about Japan's approach to AI regulation?
広島市 AI プロセスがここまでうまくいってるのはもう完全に総務省さんのおかげ
Well, it's really thanks to the MIC that we have come up with this Hiroshima AI process. But Japan, at this time, to become a moderator or to take the leadership to get everyone together, I think it's a good thing for the world because Japan,
どうしてもこうあらなければならない
well,
っていう強い
there is a very strong, for example, way of thinking supported by kind of a religion or belief. We don't have that. So we have different views and different opinions and the values that we want to respect. We can be very fair to listen to the different voices. And how can we reach an agreement? So I think on the equal footing, rather than having a strong value on our own, we are accepting the various views. So that's the kind of atmosphere that we have. So we have different values, different opinions on this topic. So Japan, as a president of the G7 this year, taking the leadership was a typical example of that. If I may add to that, the cultural and historical aspect of Japan, I think, was effective in this case. Because vis-a-vis AI, we are friendly, and I think we have a higher affinity toward AI. And as Suga-san said, so for example, we have manga, comic book, and one of the program is the Doraemon, a famous character. So we have lived with AI and to improve the daily life. So that's the kind of background that we have in Japan. So in a sense, I think it worked effectively. So about the G7, there was a view to have a hard law and also to have a soft law that is just a voluntary commitment so that we will leave things to the providers. So there are different views, and it was very difficult to come up with the consensus. But Japan, working as a coordinator to think about what is most important now and how can we utilize AI for the happiness of the people. I think we listened to the different views calmly and tried to summarize, and that was partly because of the cultural background. And it's not just at G7. In academia and the different views of the multi-stakeholders were also listened to come up with the Hiroshima AI process. So non-G7 countries' views are also listened to. So that's also a unique way that the Japan tried to listen to the different views very carefully. And of course, at the summit level, we have to have approval or discussion, and we make a report on the process, and we will reach the final agreement. So the summit meeting will be held in the near future, but we would like to work hard toward that.
Thank you very much. That's actually a perfect segue into my last question for you, Imano-san, which is, can you put into context for us the Hiroshima AI process with regard to other leadership initiatives that Japan has taken on the international stage? And are there ways, I think you've partially answered this already, but are there ways in which you think Japan is particularly suited to this leadership role?
It's a difficult question, but for example, the AI principles was discussed at OECD some time ago. And when we had the discussion, including MIC, Japan made a contribution. So G7, aside from the G7 Hiroshima process, other AI-related framework discussion, we have participated in all of them. And also GPI, a partnership for AI, that's academia and the private sector working together to set up the international framework. So there, Japan has also played an important role. So outside of G7, in the different frameworks, I think that Japan has made various contributions, and they are all linked to each other. So Hiroshima AI process is one of the examples. And as a background of that, there have been the various things that we have done. And next year and onwards, of course, the G7 presidency is over now, and the next year it will be Italy. So there will be a follow-up and also the Global South outreach and working together with other countries. I think there are still roles for Japan to play so we can lead other countries. And we are discussing this with Italy as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much to both of you for giving us such a solid foundation around Japan before we move on to our global view. So please join me in thanking our speakers.
Thank you.